Hello, everyone. How is everybody? End of the conference? Huh? I got to tell you, I'm so happy to be back in London because I have such a deep spiritual connection with this city. I have a lot of friends. A lot of them moved up north, but I got a chance to meet a lot of them. It was really good to be back. I also want to thank the people who run TOKEN2049 and the organizers. They did an incredible job, right? Give them a round of applause, right? Back of the house, front of the house. These are incredible people, really. So I had a big speech that I usually do for these things, but being that it's 5 o'clock and it's the end of the conference, I thought I'd take you in a different direction. So just briefly, my name is Jason Meyers, and I am the inventor and the lead architect for Auditchain. So what is Auditchain? It is an accounting, reporting, audit, and analysis virtual machine. And before I explain a little bit about what that means, I'd like to instead kind of go through an exercise. And the exercise I want to go through is this. I want you, if you can, to imagine the world's business and financial information. And while you're thinking about that, picture how a blockchain operates. Right? The majority of that information comes out of 50 main jurisdictions. Who relies on that information? Investors rely on that information. Certified financial analysts rely on that information. Other businesses rely on that information. Governments rely on that information. And yes, central banks rely on that information, and it plays a significant role in monetary policy. So while you're imagining the world's business information, I want you to imagine that there are 4 validators that tentatively, conditionally, and fractionally validate all that information. Can you imagine that? Would you trust a blockchain with 4 validators on it? I wouldn't. So that's traditional assurance and financial reporting. Anybody know what the difference between faith and trust is? I'll tell you. If you've ever been to the circus, you know the guy that climbs the ladder and he walks the tightrope with the wheelbarrow? You have faith. He's going to make it. He's done it 1,000 times. He'll make it across. Trust? You're going to get in the wheelbarrow. And that's what you do every day. That's what governments do every day. That's what businesses do every day. That's what investment managers do every single day, when they rely on the world's business and financial information as tentatively validated by 4 validators. We have a little bit of a different idea by applying blockchain-style validation to an enterprise as it articulates its financial state. Now, unlike a blockchain, an enterprise undergoes very complex changes in state. So if a penny hits the balance sheet, logically causes a reaction to change all of the other line items on a financial state. P&L, balance sheet, equity, cash flow. So what if we applied blockchain-style validation to the world's business and financial information? This is what it would look like. Right now, this is what it looks like. Would you trust that? I don't. I started this project because I had a fight with a regulator over an accounting. Changed the course of my career. And I went home very angry, very confused. When I fell down the rabbit hole, the Ethereum rabbit hole, when I hit bottom, this is what I saw. So, if you now imagine blockchain-style validation on the world's business and financial information, it would be a lot more reliable, wouldn't it? So, if I sent you 1 Bitcoin and there was one off-chain validator that tentatively validated a fair presentation of the transaction, would you trust Bitcoin? Would you raise your hand if you would trust Bitcoin if that was the case? No. So why would you trust the financial state of Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and every other publicly traded company? Because that's what you're doing. 4 validators, validating the world's business and financial information. So if you imagine for a minute applying blockchain-style validation, this is what it would look like. So what our project does is it recruits accountants to run nodes. And we have help from an association, which we have 80 members. They're members of the accounting, audit, and financial reporting and blockchain communities. They're actors on our protocol. The top layer of our software, our node architecture, is based upon a standard syntax in 50 jurisdictions, which is where the majority of the world's business and financial information comes from. It enables you to turn data into information, information into knowledge, and knowledge into wisdom. And it's backwards compatible. So any economic entity that submits to it is 1 click away from filing with 1 or more regulators in those 50 jurisdictions. So if you imagine again for a moment how certified financial analysts who work for investment managers like a BlackRock or CalPERS or any of the large institutional money managers, they have to aggregate this data and they have to rely on it. So the question is, are they relying on flawed data? We know that they are. Our alliance, which is made up of accountants, auditors, technology companies, blockchain developers, standard setters, participates in the development, sets standards, and promotes open source development and engineering. We're here because we're going to announce on Monday that we're launching the protocol on a testnet. It took 5 years to develop. It's not an easy project. What we hope to get out of it, and what we hope society will get out of it, is the ability ultimately for governments to rely on that information, and for central banks to rely on information that's accurate, and maybe maybe it might stop monetary debasement. Because if you think about it, every federal bailout, maybe with the exception of this past COVID money printing spree, but every federal bailout can be traced back to a failure of an auditor to act. So I'm going to leave you with a question. And the question is this: how many disagreements were filed with regulators by auditors in the periods leading up to the financial crisis? Zero. Zero. That's how many. They knew what was happening. So, the very auditors that audit the companies are paid by the companies that they audit, which sets the audit profession up into a conflict. But on our network, it's rewarded. Bitcoin-style validation, blockchain-style validation. So an enterprise might pay, but an auditor is not reliant only on the payment from the enterprise, because they also earn rewards on the network. They also share subscription revenue. And the first service we're going to launch is going to allow anybody to take a financial report that's filed already with regulators and get an analysis back to see where all the defects are. About half the financial reports filed with regulators contain defects. It's not up to us whether to say what it is. It's an anomaly. It could be a stupid error, or it could be something a lot worse. And we hope to move the institution of accountancy, the institution of corporate governance, possibly the institution of regulation forward. So watch for our launch. Our token has three main segments of utility. One is settlement, another is staking, and the other is governance. See, accountants love to talk about things. They love standards. They love to discuss and deliberate. So the governance layer is enough to lock up every token in circulation for the foreseeable future. But look for us next week. We're launching on testnet, and then we expect a commercial launch toward the end of the year. Thank you.
All right. Jason, thank you. Well, let's just see if we have any questions from the audience, if anybody would like to ask anything. Now is a good time to understand a little bit more about Autochain, or about your upcoming raise, or about the industry as itself.
Anybody have any questions? Any accountants in the room?
So we met at drinks the other night. I used to be in the real-time bookkeeping space. So we had a shared dream of making all financial information instantly available rather than annual accounts or quarterly accounts. I love the idea. Above and beyond people spotting anomalies in the accounts once filed, do you have a way of letting people sort of look inside what isn't in the books to try to, better represent the economics of the business? How will you go one deeper? Is that part of the plan?
So I really appreciate the question. I get asked that all the time. We can't force an economic entity to open its books, as you know, to anybody. What we have on our roadmap when we explain adoption to an enterprise who's contemplating something like this, mind you, forward-thinking enterprises who are open ledger-based already would contemplate something like this, because by default, they can see all the information on a blockchain anyway. But if you look at a company like MicroStrategy, because your question speaks precisely to this point. MicroStrategy is now an open ledger-based company. Why? Because the majority of the value on their balance sheet is not concealed behind the firewalls of accounting information systems and bank custody environments. If you know the addresses, you can see it, which has a whole host of implications. But what they're doing is they're articulating their financial state periodically for what is essentially an open ledger-based company. But we can't force an economic entity to expose any more information than what they're legally required to by law, unless you're a stakeholder of some sort, which there are many. Banks, regulators, insurance companies, and all these stakeholders do want to dive deeper into financial data other than just what's underneath the line items. So what we're building is an ontology that allows those who are permissioned to do so to click all the way through. But you can't force them to open that up to the public. Yeah.
Do you have a follow-on?
No, it just it'll be very interesting if, like, putting your presentation and the Centrifuge presentation together, the sort of the move of more and more stuff to being open, so that you know whether the DeFi loan you've just issued is the first lien against the company or the 50th lien against the company. I think those things naturally go together. Tokenization only works when you've got some legal framework to know where that token stands. And so it'd be very interesting to see those two things come together.
Yeah, so what I'm about to say is very controversial, and it's a very unpopular opinion, but it is what it is. The SEC takes the position that if you offer and sell a thing and it flickers on a ticker, you have an obligation to provide financial disclosure. It doesn't have to be with them, but you have an obligation nonetheless. And there are many exemptions that allow you different levels of disclosure. The OTC Markets is an exchange that lists freely tradable instruments who are everything from dark with the skull and crossbones all the way to full-blown accelerated filer status with the SEC. Just to give you an example with one jurisdiction. Many jurisdictions have very similar frameworks. So the issue of, as you say, combining or overlaying, what was the project you had mentioned, Ascend?
Centrifuge.
Centrifuge. Okay, is this. On-chain data is actually a lot easier than traditional fiat bank account ERP data, which comes from many different directions and is formatted in many different formats. It's not standardized, it's rickety. The auditors of Procter & Gamble will tell you that that enterprise is stitched together with bobby pins and rubber bands, and I quote, right? That's a far more difficult environment. And when we started the project, that's where we started, and we merged those two data environments. Blockchain data, which is easy, because it comes from one place, and by default, it's standardized. And traditional data in its many forms and formats. So on-chain pure protocol is easy. And with respect to your point about DeFi, our alliance is now working on a project to trace the collateralization across DeFi protocols, because nobody really knows what the true Basel-style LTV across all DeFi platforms are. Because I can stick value in a contract on that platform, take the derivative out, go somewhere else, collateralize that, take the value out, and I can do that for 5 or 10 or 15 hops, and then I can make a multi-legged market on Uniswap. Who knows what the true loan to value is across DeFi? So That's one of the projects that our membership is working on.
Well,
Any other questions?
Yeah, that is a big project to work on. Good luck with that. I can't wait to see what comes out of that. Just the cross-collateralization and hypothecation that you're probably going to come across. But it's probably no different to what we currently exist in the financial industry. And if you can get core data and it's standardized, then you probably have a pretty good chance of getting that nailed.
One of the things that I got to make clear is that there is somewhat of a compromise between the crypto world and the traditional world with what we do because of the ontology we use that is specified and mandated in 50 different jurisdictions. And being backwards compatible puts you one click away from regulatory compliance.
That's great. Thank you so much for that presentation. And Jason, how can we keep in contact with you? And do you have any particular mode of communication that people would like to get in contact with you?
You can follow us on Twitter, Telegram, Discord, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can get me on Twitter, Jason Meyers, NYC.
All right, you're on all the platforms. Thank you very much. Very insightful presentation. Big round of applause. Thank you very much.